So Hyatt recently released their now annual changes to their properties categories. And when they say that they have changes to their properties categories, they really just mean devaluations, because a lot more properties went up versus going down. Some of these properties I was expecting to go up because they had high demand, so when I would look to redeem points at these properties, there would not always end up being award availability to be able to book them. Plus, when I looked at the cash cost versus the points cost, this will end up being a good deal pretty much all throughout the year. So when you add those things together, you should expect a devaluation to happen with this property. Now, while most of these changes aren't good, what annoys me the most is that when it comes to the properties that went down, there are very few of them that end up being good to redeem for your points. I've only seen 2 that I'm happy about. The other 30 plus ones to me don't even matter because the points cost still isn't a good deal, which means that all the other properties that went up is just another massive devaluation to Hyatt's program. So let's jump right into the numbers of the changes. There's going to be 151 properties that are going to be changing categories with Hyatt hotels. There's going to be 118 that are going up in category and only 33 that are going down in category. This means that out of the properties that are changing categories, close to 80% of them are going up. The good news is that you have until March 25th to make an award booking and not have to worry about the changes to the hotel's category. So if you book a hotel on, say, March 20th and the hotel ends up going up in price on March 25th, you don't have to pay those additional points to stay at that property. But say you also end up booking a hotel on March 20th and the hotel's property category goes down, we end up getting credited back those points for the now lower category hotel. This is actually pretty generous of Hyatt to do because most other programs do not do this. So in this video, I'm first going to start off by the highlighted properties that are changing and give you my thoughts on them. And then to conclude this video, I'm just going to go over the different parts that are changing and then give you my overall thoughts on them. So the properties that I want to highlight that are changing in category, and unfortunately not in a good way, are going to be the Tribune in Rome, the Hyatt Regency in Paris, the Hyatt Regency in Mexico City, the Hyatt Regency in Vancouver, and the Hyatt Regency in Tokyo. These are all properties that I personally stayed at. And the time that I stayed at all of these properties, they're either a category 4 or below, which means that I was able to use a free night award certificate category 1 to 4 at many of these different properties. Last year, I went to Mexico City during Mexican Independence Day, and I used my category 1 to 4 free night award certificate to stay at the Hyatt Regency in Mexico City. And at that time, this property was going for over $900 a night. So it ended up being great value for my free night award certificate. Now this property doesn't normally go for $900 a night. It usually goes for roughly about $200 to $300 a night if it isn't Mexican Independence Day. And the good thing about this property is that it only went from being a category 3 to a category 4, so I can still end up using my free night award certificate at this property, but the rest of the properties are no longer eligible to be able to redeem my category 1 to 4 free night award certificate at. The Tribune already moved up to a category 5 last year, but now it is a category 6. And I've stayed at properties that have went from being a category 4 to a category 6 over the last couple of years that I think are justified, such as like the Thompson Hotel in Madrid, because that property is incredible and it was a steal of a deal at a category 4. But the Tribune in Rome is not the Thompson Hotel in Madrid. This is just a fine hotel in Rome. And at the category 6, I don't think it's going to make any sense to redeem your World of Hyatt points to stay at this property. Now the bump up in category for the Hyatt Regency in Paris, Vancouver, and Tokyo don't really surprise me, but I am saddened to see them go up in category. The Hyatt Regency in Paris and in Tokyo were constantly filled up with award bookings. It actually started to become a little bit challenging to find award space at these properties. And we looked at the cash costs. The Hyatt Regency in Paris, this property would consistently go for 300 to 400 euros a night. So using a category 1 to 4 free night award certificate there can end up giving you good value. And then also for only 15,000 points or 12,000 points on off-peak, this ended up being an easy property to see that it would be a good redemption to redeem your Hyatt points at. Now the Hyatt Regency in Paris isn't in the greatest location, but it does have a club lounge and also a fantastic view of the city. The Hyatt Regency in Tokyo I felt was an underrated property, so I'm not really surprised to see it go up. I wish it would stay down just so that there would at least be one property in Tokyo that I could use my category 1 to 4 free night award certificate with, but my stay there was great. The staff was super attentive, and when it comes to location, I don't know if there's a better location that you can be at than at the Hyatt Regency in Tokyo. Because as soon as you walk outside of the steps and you go downstairs, you are already at the train station to move all around the entire city. It's in Shinjuku, which is one of the most popular places in Tokyo, and it's walking distance from many of the tourist attractions. For me, the Hyatt Regency in Tokyo and also the Hyatt Regency in Paris, even though the property price point is going up, I would still stay at both of these properties. Obviously, I have to make it make sense when it comes to points cost versus cash cost, but say I happen to be going to Tokyo during cherry blossom season or going over to Paris during the summer, then I definitely could see it making make sense even at a category 5 to stay at these properties. Now, the Hyatt Regency in Vancouver was not a property that blew me away, and if I'm being completely honest, I barely remember my stay there, but I do remember visiting Vancouver and that this property was in a really easy to get around location, and it just saddens me that there's another property that's moving out of a Category 4 into being a Category 5. Now, a few of the properties that I want to highlight that are also moving up in category, but are properties that I haven't stayed at before, are the Hyatt Centric in Dublin, the Caption Hotel in Osaka, and then the Andaz in Costa Rica. Now, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Andaz in Costa Rica just a few years ago a Category 4 hotel? If I'm remembering correctly, I was thinking about trying to use my Category 1 to 4 Free Night Award certificate to stay at this property. Now this property is a Category 8 hotel. If I'm remembering correctly, then this is the most devalued property out of all of Hyatt's properties. Now, I've never stayed here before, and the property does look really nice. But my goodness, has this property jumped up in category really fast. Now, the Caption Hotel in Osaka isn't even a little bit surprising to me. If I'm being completely honest, I'm just happy that this property didn't jump from being a Category 1 all the way up to a Category 3 right away. This property is a huge favorite of Hyatt fanboys, and it's always booked up because of its shockingly low price. I've seen numerous days where you can book this hotel at 3,500 points a night. Now, being a Category 2 hotel and averaging 8,000 points a night, it still is worth it, and if I happen to return to Osaka, I will definitely look to try to book this property. Now, the Hyatt Centric in Dublin, I wanted to highlight because when it comes to Category 1 to 4s in Europe, they're just running out. This was one of the few ones that was still a Category 4 that it can make sense to redeem your certificate at, but after this move, you're really going to be running out of places to redeem your certificate at in Europe for good value. Now, while the changes are mainly bad, there are a couple of them that went down in category that I do want to highlight. And when I look at when it comes to going down in category this year as compared to last year there were some changes when it went down in category that I think that people may have been able to see as a positive overall. But when it comes to the ones that went down in category this year, it is slim pickings when it comes to the overall value you're going to be getting from these ones that go down in category. The first property I want to look at is going to be the Park Hyatt in Jakarta. This property to me looks super luxurious. I was actually thinking about going to this property when I was booking my trip to go to Indonesia last year, but I instead decided to go over to Bali, but I was seriously contemplating about going to this property instead. Now, when you look at this property, when it comes to its standard room cash price versus its award price, there isn't some type of crazy value you're going to be getting for your World of Hyatt points. But where this property is special is if you decide to redeem your World of Hyatt points to either book a standard suite here or a premium suite. Premium suites, when they are available to book with points, end up being double the cost. So instead of this room now being at a Category 3 costing 12,000 points, if you decide to book a premium suite, if it is available, it would only end up costing you 24,000 points. And if you look at this premium suite, it consistently goes for over $1,000 a night to stay in it. And this isn't some bootleg suite. This thing is absolutely beautiful. I guarantee that if you booked this room, it'd probably end up being the best room that you've ever stayed in. And I would have booked it for 30,000 points at the previous cost. Being able now to book it for only 24,000 points is an absolute steal of a deal. I mean, if you were to ask me if I would rather stay at the Park Hyatt in Jakarta in their premium suite for only 24,000 points a night versus staying again at the Tribune for 25,000 points a night, obviously location matters and Rome is more expensive than Jakarta, but I have no desire to stay at the Tribune again. And I actually got upgraded to a suite when I was staying there. It's not a bad property, it just wasn't anything that was special to me. But I would book an entire trip to be able to stay at this Park Hyatt in Jakarta just so I could live like a king in a castle for a few days. And the second property that's going down in category that you want to look at is going to be the Thompson Hotel in Atlanta. Thompson Hotels are my favorite properties within Hyatt's portfolio. And Atlanta is a place in America that I haven't visited before, but I really want to check out. And now that this property is dropping down to a Category 4, this is going to be the place that I'm going to be looking to use my Free Night Award certificate at. There's very few major cities now that you can redeem your Free Night Award certificate at that end up also being nice properties. And that's pretty much it for the properties that went down. Are there more properties that went down? Sure, but none of them worth highlighting. Yes, the Park Hyatt in Qatar went down in cost, but the cash cost is always cheap there, so it's still not going to make any sense to redeem your World of Hyatt points to stay at this property. I used to think that these devaluations with Hyatt every year were better than the devaluations that happen with airlines every few years. But I don't think that anymore. I mean, you can look at it like this. A property that went from being a Category 4 that costs 15,000 points standard, now up to a Category 5 that is 20,000 points standard, that is a 33% increase in cost, and you are no longer allowed to use your Free Night Award certificate at. We get to see properties get devalued year after year, which is way worse than what you're going to see from the airlines. At least with other programs, I feel like I understand when I see devaluations, because if they do it every 4 to 5 years, there is inflation that needs to be added to it, so you should end up seeing devaluations. I mean, Hyatt is decreasing either at the same speed or much faster than Marriott. I know some people may not believe that because we still have an award chart, but if you look at where Hyatt was 4 years ago as compared to where Marriott was 4 years ago, at the very least they are increasing at the same speed, but I think Hyatt's actually doing it at a worse speed. This isn't me saying that the Hyatt program is worse than the Marriott program, but what I'm trying to say is that if Hyatt was a 10 and Marriott was a 6, well, Marriott has went down to being a 2 and Hyatt has went down to being a 5. So even though Hyatt is still better, it is a bigger decrease. But those are the properties that I wanted to highlight for Hyatt's category changes. If you want to stick around for the rest of the video, I'm just going to talk about more category changes with specific areas and give you my thoughts on that. So the first area we're going to look at is going to be Japan. Now for anyone who watches this channel frequently, you know that Japan has been my favorite country that I've ever visited, and it's one that I recommend to everyone to go to. And Japan got hit pretty hard when it comes to Hyatt's devaluations. If you have a category 1 to 4 free night award certificate and you want to use it to stay in Tokyo, well, you better use it before March 25th because there's not going to be any options after that date. Sorry, let me correct myself because that last sentence I said isn't accurate information. You still can redeem your category 1 to 4 certificate to stay at the Hyatt property that's in Tokyo Bay. But this property is way out of the way and only makes sense to stay at this property if you want to go visit the Disneyland in Tokyo. If you actually want to go explore Tokyo, you wouldn't want to stay at this property. You'd either want to stay at the Hyatt Regency in Tokyo or the Hyatt House in Shibuya. And both of these properties are moving from a category 4 to now being a category 5. The Hyatt House in Shibuya is a property that I haven't stayed at before, but I actually have it booked for later on this year for a short stay that I'm going to be having in Tokyo. Now from what I've seen on this property, it looks to me just fine. But the real reason why I want to stay here as compared to like the Hyatt Regency is because I haven't really explored Shibuya. So going back to Japan, I'd like to stay in different places each time to be able to explore new things. The thing that always surprised me about this property is how expensive it would be when it comes to cash costs and also how little of award availability it was because of how often other people would book this property up with points. I do think this property ends up being a good one for families because they do have a washer and dryer in your room at this property. So that can be great for a lot of people, especially for those who are traveling in bigger parties. Other notable properties that have jumped in Japan are going to be the Grand Hyatt Tokyo, the Andaz in Tokyo, and the Park Hyatt Tokyo. All three of these properties went from being a category 7 property to now being a category 8. And the reason why this is important is because if you were someone who is a globalist and gets that 1 to 7 category free night award certificate after you end up hitting 60 elite nights, well now all three of these properties will no longer be eligible to redeem your certificate with. The shocking one to me that went up in award price is the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo. I have no idea why this property keeps on going up in price year after year. Because when I look at the cash costs and also when it comes to trying to find award availability, the cash cost isn't terribly high and the award availability has never been a challenge for me to be able to find to stay at this property. Now I'm not saying that the cash cost is low to stay at this property, but when you compare it to the Park Hyatt Tokyo and the Andaz in Tokyo, the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo tends to be significantly lower. Now I haven't stayed at this property, but I feel like I've always seen award availability to stay at this property. If you are someone who has stayed at this property, let me know if you feel that the points price is worth it to book at the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo. The Andaz in Tokyo, on the other hand, is one that is always booked up, but they don't have a ton of rooms. And this is also a property that you will consistently see going for $1,000 a night. When looking out the window at this property, there's a beautiful view of Tokyo Tower that's probably unbeaten at any other property. So I'm not surprised that this property went up, given the regular cash cost to stay at this property and also how consistently this property is booked up when it comes to award costs. But I also have heard mixed reviews when it comes to staying at this property due to the fact of like the location and things like that. People say that the property is good but not worth the amount of points. If this is a property that you have stayed at, also let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of the Andaz in Tokyo? Do you think that ends up being justified going up, or do you think this property is just okay? And the Big Daddy Park Hyatt Tokyo has also went up in category. Now this one isn't surprising to me because this is a great property that has been doing renovations all of last year, and they will be doing it most of this year as well. So having this property being a category 7 that was already a great property, moving up to now being its top category 8 after renovations, seems like it makes sense. This is my favorite property that I've ever stayed at, and I can't wait to see what it looks like after the renovations. I'm going to be someone who's going to be perfectly fine with paying 40,000 points to stay at this property in hopes that I can have the same level of experience that I had the last time. Now I know not everyone would agree with me on that, but I absolutely love this property. Another place that got hit pretty hard is Bali. Almost every Hyatt property in Bali went up in category. Now Bali's already a pretty cheap place, so I don't know why they would make all of these properties go up in category, but I do not think that it's worth it to redeem your World of Hyatt points for any of these Bali properties. I stayed at a few different Hyatt properties in Bali, one of them being the Hyatt Regency Bali. And I gotta say that I enjoyed my stay here. The staff was super sweet, and they felt more like they were inviting me to their home instead of just a hotel. And I stay at this property over the Andaz because they are literally connected to one another. Anytime I travel and I go to a place that has two hotels, they're either in the same building or they're just side by side to one another, I always just choose the cheaper hotel. Location is a big reason of why I decide to choose a place. So if you're gonna have a property that's either right beside it or connected to it or in the same building, I'm just gonna go with the cheaper property. I think these properties share the same weight room, and if people at the Ondas wanna come to the club lounge, then I think they have the option to be able to do that. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate, but I've read from some people who have stayed at the Ondas saying that they've done that. And this isn't me knocking the Ondas in Bali. I walked through it and it looks like a very nice property. But now at a category 6, it seems pretty pricey to me. The Alila in Seminyak is also going up in price. This is another property that I stayed at in Bali. Unfortunately, I didn't have a good stay there because I got terrible food poisoning, but I stayed there during off-peak times and only ended up costing 17,000 points a night. But now at a possible average of 25,000 points a night, I thought 17,000 points a night was too much to be spending in Bali. At 25,000 points a night, I really do not think that's going to be worth it. However, I had a terrible stay there, so my opinion is not completely objective. South Korea did have a few properties that dropped in price, but none of them are in the most popular city of Seoul. They're not bad options, but it's just that they're not in Seoul. In the Caribbean, a few of the all-inclusive properties went up. Now, I'm not someone who stays at all-inclusive properties, so I don't check these prices very frequently, but I do remember that last year they had a devaluation, and big part of it that was hit was the all-inclusive properties. So to me, this isn't surprising that these are just getting just as devalued as the other properties were. Hyatt has quite a few all-inclusives, but from what I'm seeing, it doesn't make a ton of sense to redeem your Hyatt points at these properties. I did see that the second Hyatt Regency in Mexico City went down in price. This property does not look bad at all. And it's probably end up being the one that I'm going to choose the next time I visit Mexico City due to the cheap points price. Europe already wasn't good to redeem your World of Hyatt points. They did have these Linder hotels that were in Germany that were stupid cheap that did go up in price. But even though that they did go up in price, they still are really cheap. So if you happen to be going to either Frankfurt or any part of Germany these hotels are at, check them out because they look pretty nice and they are mainly like either a category 1, 2, or 3 property. A few of the properties in London also went up in price, which isn't surprising to me due to the fact of how expensive London is. But what is interesting is that they just opened up a new Park Hyatt in London last year that is a category 7. But one of the properties that they moved up was a category 6 Hyatt Regency to now being a category 7. How are we going to have a Hyatt Regency at the exact same price cost for points that you're going to have your flagship Park Hyatt? This to me doesn't make any sense. So don't be surprised if the next go around the Park Hyatt London is a category 8. The Ondas in the Netherlands also went up, and this is one of those properties, if I remember correctly, has went up more than once in the last few years. But this is a property that, while it does look good and I have read decent reviews on it, it doesn't look like a category 7 property. For people who don't remember, category 7 properties used to be the cream of the crop properties. And then like 2 to 3 years ago, they added in the category 8 that was specifically for small luxury hotels of the world. And then what they ended up doing was they grabbed some of the category 7 properties that were also still like the cream of the crop, Park Hyatts and things like that, and they moved them up to category 8. But they still end up being just top properties at category 7. But now at category 7, I feel like there's a few properties that are great properties, but the majority of them now just seem like good properties. But that's all the properties I want to talk about. Also, many of the category 1 properties have moved up to being a category 2. Hyatt is quickly moving to a place where it's not going to make a lot of sense to transfer over your Chase Ultimate Reward points to your World of Hyatt account, because you could instead just cash out your Hyatt points to stay at many of these properties and also earn points on your cash. Or if you don't happen to want to earn any points, you could just use something like the Chase Sapphire Reserve to get a 50% boost to either stay at that Hyatt property or any property that you want to stay at. If you do not feel that you can get outsized value from having points with a program, then what is the point of being loyal to that program? You can just use your cash to stay at any properties and then not try to earn points with that program if you're not going to be getting any outsized value. Just earn cash instead and then use that cash to be as much of a free agent as you can. Because being a free agent will let you shop around for better prices and also other luxury hotels. And once you do that, you'll realize you don't only have to stay with Hyatt properties. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts of the 2025 devaluation to the World of Hyatt program? Are you like many of the people online who thinks, this isn't all that bad? Or you like myself who's just thinking, it's looking better and better to be a free agent? Now, if you happen to have any questions, you can drop it down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you happen to be interested in any cards, check out my links in the description box to learn more. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel, and I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. And if you want to become a Points and Miles booking expert, go to Points Travel 101 to purchase my course. After completing my course, you will feel confident with booking business class and first class flights all over the globe. If you happen to really like this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.